Hello everyone and welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Jessica Pimentel and I'm a flight attendant for an airline in the United States of America. Today I am pretty much bored in the house because I am on call and I'm on reserve from 3 p.m. to 3 in the morning. It is about 4:30 in the afternoon and I have yet to be called for a trip. So hopefully this video isn't interrupted from a call by crew scheduling. We shall see, so stay tuned. But I decided to do a little sit down video with you guys today and just talk about my personal travel pro tips as a flight attendant that I would pretty much give to anyone that I know that is traveling. All right, so tip number one is always, and I mean seriously, every single time you go on an airplane, bring a blanket, a sweater, or something that's gonna keep you warm. Do not go on an airplane in crop tops and shorts because that is a recipe for freezing your butt off because it is not warm in there, ladies and gentlemen. It is cold. It's hardly ever I hear people complaining about how hot the airplane is during the flight. Trust me when I say cover yourself when you're flying. Tip number two is if you plan on taking a red eye out somewhere on your vacation, make sure to try to take the red eye that is the closest time to the time that you would potentially be sleeping. Which means if you're going to be taking a flight at 11:45 p.m. to arrive at your destination at about 10 in the morning, 11 in the afternoon, 6 in the morning, and so on. It's better to take that really late flight so that way when you land, your body is in better terms of the hour in which you land in. For example, since you're leaving so late, you're more likely to sleep majority of the flight, and then when you land, you'll feel better. For example, this past summer, my boyfriend and I went to Norway. The flight was at 6 p.m., but we landed at 8 o'clock in the morning. Now, taking a flight at 6 p.m. from the US, it's kind of hard to fall asleep. Like my circadian rhythm is not ready to sleep at 6 p.m. So therefore, we only fell asleep at approximately 12 a.m., which meant we only had about 2 hours left in that flight, meaning that we only really slept 2 hours for that 6 to 8 hour flight anyway. So we landed in Norway feeling exhausted. So always get a red eye that is as close to your sleeping hour as possible. That way you can feel as rested as possible when you land in your destination. Of course, it's hard to sleep on planes. I'm not saying that you're gonna for sure sleep on that red eye if it's as close to your sleeping hour as possible, but you're more likely to get a few hours in rather than taking a fake red eye at an earlier time, basically. Tip number three, and this is something I see all of the time, is do not give yourself anything less than 2 hours if you're connecting. And if you're connecting internationally, I think 2 to 2.5 hours is a safe bet, but 3 is probably better because if you're delayed or something goes wrong, you're probably gonna have to get your bags when you're coming in internationally, and that's gonna take forever. Or when you're leaving internationally, so that's gonna take forever. For example, let's say you're flying to Miami to Amsterdam and you need to make a connection in London. Well, when you go from Miami to London, you're gonna have to get your suitcases. And then from London to Amsterdam, you're gonna have to recheck them and then make it to your flight. So that's a good example of why it's important to give yourself 2 to 3 hour connection time internationally. Now, if you're traveling domestically, I still think that 2 hours is important because maintenance happens, delay happens, weather happens, so it's always good just to be safe. But luckily, when you are traveling domestically, unless you're changing airline, you don't usually have to recheck your bags and get your bags. So that saves a lot of time. Tip number 4 is if you can, do not check a bag. Just take a personal item and a carry-on with you. That will save you so much hassle, so much worry. You won't have to show up at the airport as early. And if you do have connections internationally, you won't have to worry about getting your bags. So a personal item and a carry-on is always the go-to. I always travel with a backpack and a small carry-on, and I never have to worry about checking it in. And it's just easier to maneuver around the airport with just that. And then whenever you land, you don't have to worry about going to baggage claim. It just makes your life so much easier if you just have a personal item and a carry-on. Trust me. Tip number 5 is always, always, always wear closed-toed shoes or shoes that have a strap or shoes that you can run in. If you can wear sneakers, I would definitely recommend wearing sneakers because if you land late and you need to run to your connection, it is better off that you have sneakers on so you can go running and your shoes are not flying everywhere, because that would suck if they fell off and you lost a shoe, because I've seen shoes at the airport. Like, people lose their shoes there and people don't make their connections because they can't run fast enough. So if you can do anything to help, it is definitely wear sneakers or closed-toed shoes. That way you can run. Now, I say closed-toed shoes because as a flight attendant, I wear closed-toed pumps and Mary Janes, and I'm able to run in those suckers. I can run pretty far and pretty fast, and I have made plenty of my connections. Usually my running comes from landing from a work trip and then having to make a connection to go on a trip or a vacation or to visit family or friends somewhere, and that's usually when my running happens, and trust me, it helps so much having closed-toed shoes. But like I said, sneakers are definitely the way to go. Tip number 6 is always drink plenty of water when you're flying. If you're not used to being on an airplane, then your body might hold on to more water retention. If you're a flight attendant or flight crew or just someone that's always traveling, you might actually be used to the different altitude changes and you might actually feel like your body doesn't hold on to water as much. But regardless, being hydrated is very important, and I would recommend eating foods that are high in water, like fruits, watermelon, bell peppers. Those are always really good to get some extra water intake while you're flying. And of course, just drinking water as much as possible is always a pro tip. And pretty much anything you do, really. Always water is the answer. Tip number 9 is if you are going on a long haul flight or even just flying domestically and like your peace and quiet while you're flying, I definitely recommend bringing an eye mask and some earplugs because that will help you be kind of in your own zone if you want to sleep on your flight. Bringing an eye mask helps with the sun coming in and other people leaving their window shades up. And of course, bringing earplugs helps tone out the rest of the noise going on in the airplane. Airplanes are just loud in general, so I feel like earplugs really help you if you want to sleep, and you never know who you're going to be sitting next to. Some people are not very courteous of who they're sitting next to, and they play their music really loud. They don't put on headphones. Of course, you are supposed to wear headphones if you're listening to something on your phone on an airplane, but not everybody abides by those rules. So for you to be safe and not have to worry about listening to things that you don't want to listen to, earplugs are definitely the way to go. And of course, we all love babies, but sometimes babies will be crying or screaming and they happen to be sitting right next to you or right behind you. So that is when earplugs come in very handy. Of course, I always love seeing babies on the plane, and I always feel so bad when they're crying, but it's just inevitable at times, and the only thing that we can really do is really nothing, so you might as well wear your earplugs if that's going to help you have a better flight. Okay, next tip is I think that bringing cash on your international travels is very important, but I think that if you have a credit card that does not have international transaction fees, you are way better off using that. Of course, there's always going to be a place that only takes cash, but I think that not having to worry about having cash and only having to worry about having a credit card is much better for you because you are less likely to lose one credit card versus leaving cash somewhere or overpaying, and then some people might not have change for you. So I think that having a credit card with no international fees makes your life so much easier when traveling. Tip number 10 is be aware that a lot of American apps do work internationally. Like for example, Uber. Uber is an app that I have used in Brazil, I've used in London, I've used in Spain, I have used in so many different countries. I've used it in Ecuador. I can name so many countries that I've used it in, and a lot of people think that they need to take a taxi when that's not always the case. Sometimes taxis are extremely overpriced and you're much better off sticking to Uber, and you just want to make sure you're getting the most for your buck. So I definitely recommend sticking to your apps that you already have on your phone if available. Another thing, for example, is sometimes TripAdvisor, Yelp, or even Google are great places to search restaurants, bars, and different activities that you can do in those cities. A lot of people do not do that, and they kind of just rely on the hotel they're staying at or maybe the word of mouth from other people, which is great. But I think that making sure that you can still rely on what you already have available to you can save you a lot of time and effort when traveling. Another tip is I usually just stick to airplane mode when I am traveling, meaning I don't normally buy a certain internet service or talking service for my cell phone. I kind of just connect to Wi-Fi everywhere I go. Usually Wi-Fi is pretty accessible depending on what country you're traveling to, but normally if you go to a cafe or a restaurant, a shopping center, or even just certain streets, there is a lot of public Wi-Fi areas and it's very easily accessible to the public. And normally you just have to use your email address and fill out a form and you get free Wi-Fi. So I usually just stick to keeping my phone on airplane mode and then connecting to Wi-Fi every chance that I get. Of course, there are some trips where if I'm going hiking and I know that my service is going to be pretty bad, even if I bought service with my phone plan, I'm probably not going to have very good service there either. But if there's a time where I know that I'm just going to be driving through the cities and I'm not going to be in restaurants all the time, I might pay a little bit extra to have a specific phone plan. That way I'll have internet access at all times if I need to have it. But usually if you use Google Maps or Apple Maps and you have Wi-Fi and you just set the location that you're going to go to and press go on the directions, the actual app will take you there even when your Wi-Fi disconnects. So that is very cool and is one of the best parts about traveling and not having to spend extra money on your phone bill. Another tip which is very important to me is always go grocery shopping if you can. Of course, I think it's important to go to restaurants and check out fun places, but if you're going to restaurants for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, that is going to be so expensive. It is not cheap to be going out to eat nowadays, and no matter what country you're in, the prices can pretty much rack up. So I definitely recommend eating out when you want to, but definitely take advantage of going grocery shopping, and that way you can get the real taste of what it's like eating as a local in the destination that you are at, because there is really no better way to eat as a local than to go grocery shopping like locals do. Another tip is always bring a water bottle with you whenever you are traveling. A lot of cities are very pro water bottles and they will have water fountains and drinking stations all throughout the city. It is so common nowadays. I'm actually shocked at how often I see it. So it's always great to have a water bottle handy. That way you can just fill up the water bottle and then you're good to go. You also save money by doing this. And of course you save on plastic, which is therefore saving the environment. So very good tip here. Last but not least, this tip is always pack extra underwear. And if you're like me and you love socks, bring extra socks as well. You never know how long you're gonna need to stay in a place if your flight gets canceled, if you get stuck somewhere, especially if you travel standby. So it's very important to bring extra underwear. Also, you never know if it starts raining and your clothes get all wet. It's nice that you can wash the clothes that you're wearing and let it dry, but if you don't have a washing machine or a dryer readily available to you where you're staying, just having extra underwear can just make you feel a lot cleaner, in my opinion. So definitely always bring extra underwear and socks. Socks because I just love socks and I just don't feel like myself without socks. If you want to be really technical, definitely put extra underwear and socks in your carry-on bags. Therefore, you know if you get stuck somewhere, you will have a clean pair of underwear and socks, and that would make all the difference. All right, everyone, that's going to conclude this video. These are my top tips for traveling. This is what I have learned as a flight attendant and on my own traveling as well. So thank you all so much for watching. I appreciate all your support and I will see you in the next one. Beijinhos. Ciao, ciao.